I've worked as a correctional officer for a long time. I've worked at facilities in Texas and Michigan. The oldest prison I've ever worked at just recently started to close in Michigan, and it got me thinking about all the paranormal experiences I had there and in other prisons I've worked at. I'd like to share with all of you some of the more notable paranormal experiences that I've had while working in these prisons. First of all, I'd like to say that I've never really believed in ghosts before I started working as a correctional officer. I started off working in Texas at an intake facility. I worked night shifts 12 hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first experience that I ever had was working on a lower security housing unit. When finishing a round, I was chatting with my partner and I heard a loud banging sound. It was at like 3 a.m. at this point. No prisoner should be out of their bunks. I asked my partner if they knew what the banging was. They, being an older officer, told me bluntly that the unit we were working was haunted. They told me the sound was coming from a door of one of the small, quiet cells in a hallway, not directly visible from the officer's station, and about how a prisoner had died in one. The prisoner allegedly died because the officers working there at the time had given them a sack of food when it was lunchtime for prisoners, and the prisoner had choked on the food and died. I really didn't believe that the unit was haunted, so I decided to go look at this door. The sound volume increased as I got closer to the door. The door itself was visibly shaking as if someone was pounding on it. There was nothing that could have been causing the door to shake like it was. I was at a loss for words. Later that night, I checked the door again, and there was a steamed up handprint visible on the glass of the door's window. Another experience I had was at the same facility, but at a different housing unit. It was around 1 to 2 a.m., and I was sitting inside the officer station, watching the cameras and talking to my partner. I looked at one of the cameras and clearly see a prisoner sitting at a table in the day room. I turned my head to look at the day room, and no one is sitting at the table I just saw on camera. I asked my partner to go check it out because no one is supposed to be out of bed yet. I roll back the time on the camera to see if I could see where the prisoner might have gone. The prisoner on the camera literally slowly fades away and vanishes completely. My partner comes back into the officer station, and we both watch this video over and over. Later on that same night, during one of my rounds, I notice a wet floor sign that got left out. I return it to the porter closet. I get back to the officer station, and I look back to where the porter closet is, and I see the same wet floor sign left out. I ask my partner if they're playing a joke on me or something, because I just put the sign away. Partner denies doing anything with it. I go back out and make sure I put the sign back in the closet and lock the door. I get back to the officer station. Wet floor sign right there in the open again. My partner and I are both watching this wet floor sign now. It starts to tip over on one end, very slowly, 2 of its legs off the ground. The sign then slams itself to the ground. It then proceeded to slide quickly up the hallway and then back to in front of the closet door before ceasing all movement. My partner and I refused to come out of the officer station for the rest of the night because we were scared shitless. One more notable one from Texas. I was working in an ADSEG unit, really high security unit for prisoners that get in fights and cause a lot of problems repeatedly. We had a prisoner who was sitting in one of our close observation cells. These cells are usually used for people who threaten harming themselves. In the summertime, prisoners will sometimes say that they are suicidal to be put in one of these cells because they are a lot cooler and are near AC vents that the normal housing units don't have. The prisoner told me that this was what they were doing and that they didn't want to cause any problems. Later on that night, one of my partners and I were watching cameras, and all of a sudden, we see a shadow moving across the floor. Eventually, it comes to the closed observation cell and disappears under the door. This is where it gets a little crazy. I do a round and check on the closed observation cell. The prisoner is pacing in the cell. I ask the prisoner if they're okay, and the prisoner tells me that something doesn't feel right and they're hearing voices that aren't there. I try to calm them down, and eventually they do and lay on the bed. Later on, my partner calls for assistance because the prisoner had bitten the skin of their own wrists, causing them to bleed, held them up above their head, and allegedly was speaking in tongues. When I started working at prisons in Michigan, I worked at a prison that is now closing. It was built back in 1877 and is one of the oldest prisons still operating in all of the United States. There were so many small experiences that I've had there. Doors would slam, you'd hear voices, cold chills. The first really notable experience I had was around Christmas time on third shift. I was working the oldest unit on the facility. Usually we don't have prisoners there, but we had opened the unit to separate prisoners during the COVID pandemic. I didn't have a partner due to how short-staffed we were, so one of the other officers set up a TV for me to keep me entertained, because I'd be really far away from all the other units and get bored with no one to talk to. I do rounds for most of the night, watching TV in between them. I suddenly hear a banging noise from a door that leads to a hallway that takes you all the way to an even older, unused, condemned part of the prison. I open the door and take a look down the hallway. A cold breeze hits me, and suddenly my arm hairs stand on end. I close the door, thoroughly creeped out. I go and sit down and start watching TV again. The TV starts flipping through channels rapidly and then stops on static. I have to get moved to a different unit because I'm scared shitless. One day, on third shift, my work friend and I were working positions that allowed us to have a lot of free time and no prisoners to watch. We decided to explore the prison. We explored the tunnels that went underneath the prison, the old barns, the old unstaffed gun towers. We eventually decided to go look at the old condemned part of the prison from my earlier experience. There was a big metal gate that was about halfway down the hallway that had to be operated by a big skeleton key. We get back to the old condemned part, and my friend tells me about how this part was supposed to be the old segregation. We had to use flashlights to see because this section is so old it's not powered. The energy back there I won't ever forget. Just being there filled me with a feeling of dread. I asked my friend to head back, and we started to head back to where the hallway to the gate was. My friend's flashlight suddenly dies. We make it to the hallway, barely able to see anything in the almost pitch blackness. We hear something running after us, so we started running up the hallway too. My friend fumbles with the key as we hear it getting closer. We get the gate open and sprint out of there. Later on, I noticed that my friend had red claw marks all over his arms. Well, that's all I got for you all. I hope you enjoy reading about these. This story happened in my hometown when I think I was about 8 or 9 years old. My hometown is very small, though there are multiple neighborhoods and the occasional abandoned house left to rot. At that time, I didn't know much of the town history, but I knew of the old building that was called the old, insert town name, school, by my classmates and teachers. Anyways, one day I was walking to school, and since the abandoned building is on my way, I took a glance at it. In one of the windows of the house, I saw a pure white curtain flapping around because of the wind. Behind the curtain, there were 3 elderly women that seemed to be having a conversation before looking down from the window at me. making eye contact. I still have a vivid memory of the look on one of the woman's faces, a face of confusion. I quickly broke eye contact and continued walking to school. I don't remember what happened that day, except for that strange experience. I don't know what I saw that day, if it really happened, and if I was supposed to see it. For all I know, it could have been a dream. The only people I have told about this experience were my mom and friend. My mom said that I saw ghosts, like a past student of the school, but other than that, she laughed it off. My friend, on the other hand, was creeped out by the story, also telling me that I probably saw ghosts. For extra information, there is no reason for people to be entering the building, and there is no accessible entrance that I know of. The area around the building is all covered in weeds, vines, and bushes. All windows and doors are boarded up with wood, and no one investigates that building's area. I'm not sure if I really did see ghosts, or if it was a dream. I might try to get a picture of the building when I can, to support my story. I bought my first house 9 months ago. It's a huge accomplishment for me. On the evening after I closed on the house, I had a little champagne toast in the new place. I invited my boyfriend, my sister, we'll call her J, her 4-year-old daughter, we'll call her M, my best friend, Aunt T, and my son and brother, who live with me. It only lasted an hour or two. I gave everyone the tour. My best friend and Jay wanted to stop in every room and talk about my plans for it. I ordered pizza. We had a champagne toast. My niece M had a great time running through the house. She and my sister have a 700 square foot apartment, so my place seemed huge to her. M loved my room. I have a closet in my room with a built-in pedestal kind of thing, so we sat her on it and joked that it could be her room. All in all, it was a good time. Everyone who didn't live there headed out around the same time, starting with J and M. It was a school night. Not even 5 minutes after J and M left, my sister calls me, still driving home. My sister sounded shaken, and I was worried for a second that her car broke down, or she got in an accident. But no. Jay says she asked M if she had a good time, and if she liked Aunt D's new place. M says, yeah, I had fun with Aunt D, Aunt T, and that little girl. My sister said she actually pumped the brakes on the car because her instinct was to stop the car in its tracks. There were no other children in the house that night, just M. Jay is trying not to scare M, but she wants to know more, so she gently asks, oh, what little girl? M says, the one that was standing behind Aunt D all night. My sister presses her a little more and asks M what the little girl looks like. M says she has long black hair and she has on a pretty blue dress. My sister asks if the little girl spoke to her. M says no, she was shy, but she had fun chasing each other through the house, and the little girl was sitting in her house, aka my closet, when we opened the door. M hesitated to walk into the closet at first, and I didn't know why. Now, I know why. Apparently, I have a little ghost girl in my house. She likes my closet, and me. My house was built in 1900, so it has a long history, but I haven't looked into the history yet. I have not seen or heard a thing in this house since I moved in, but I did not sleep well the first few nights.